I should have known something was off the moment Greg's mother, Marion, showed up unannounced at our house. The two of them thought they were being discreet, huddled in the study with the door closed, but their hushed tones carried through the hallway. "You have to tell her," Marion hissed. "Evelyn deserves to know the truth." My heart pounded as I pressed my ear against the door, straining to make out Greg's muffled response. "Wasn't supposed to happen? Mistake. Can't lose everything." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stumbled back, my mind racing. What truth was Marion talking about? What had Greg done? As the pieces started to fall into place, memories of Greg's late nights at the office and unexplained absences flooded back to me. The signs had been there all along, but I had been too blinded by love and trust to see them. The door swung open, and Greg froze when he saw me standing there. His face drained of color, and I knew in that moment that my life was about to change forever. "Evelyn, I can explain," he began, but I held up a hand to silence him. "Don't bother," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "I heard enough." Marion averted her gaze, shame etched into her features. She had known about Greg's deception and kept it from me, her own daughter-in-law. "How could you?" I asked, looking between the two of them. "After everything we've been through, how could you betray me like this?" Greg reached for me, but I recoiled from his touch. "It's not what you think," he pleaded. "It was a mistake, a one-time thing that happened years ago." My mind raced, trying to process his words. A one-time thing? That didn't explain the secrecy, the lies, the guilt written all over their faces. "Tell me the truth," I demanded, my voice growing stronger. "I deserve to know what's really going on." Greg exchanged a pained look with his mother before turning back to me. I have a child from an affair I had years ago." The room spun around me as the weight of his confession sank in. A child. Greg had fathered a child with another woman, and they had both kept it from me for God knows how long. "How could you do this to our family?" I choked out, tears stinging my eyes. "How could you lie to me for all these years?" Greg tried to explain, to justify his actions, but his words fell on deaf ears. The man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, was a stranger to me now. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt and betrayal gave way to a burning determination. I would not be a victim in this story. I would not let Greg's deceit define me. "Get out," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "Both of you, get out of my house." Marion opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "No, you don't get to speak, not after you enabled this for who knows how long." Greg looked at me, pleading, but I had made up my mind. The life we had built together was over, and it was time for me to start writing a new chapter, one where I took control of my own destiny. As they left, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. The road ahead would be long and painful, but I was ready to face it head on. Greg's betrayal had shattered my world, but it would not break me. I was Evelyn Parker, and I was just getting started. After kicking Greg and his mother out of the house, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a steely resolve to uncover the full extent of Greg's deception. I paced the living room, my mind racing. How could he have done this to me, to our family? The man I thought I knew was nothing but a lie. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my thoughts. Greg stood in the doorway, his expression a mix of guilt and desperation. "Evelyn, please let me explain," he pleaded, taking a step towards me. I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Explain what, Greg? How you've been lying to me for years. How you fathered a child with another woman." His shoulders slumped, and he averted his gaze. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" I scoffed. "You have a child, Greg. A living, breathing human being that you've been keeping from me and our daughters." He flinched at the mention of our girls, and I felt a pang of guilt for the pain this would inevitably cause them. But they deserved to know the truth about their father. "I never meant to hurt you," Greg said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was going to tell you, I swear." "When, Greg?" I demanded. "When were you going to tell me that our entire marriage has been built on lies?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. We both knew there was no good answer, no justification for what he had done. "Get out," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. I don't want to see your face again until you're ready to come clean about everything." Greg looked like he wanted to protest, but something in my expression must have stopped him. He turned and left without another word, the weight of his betrayal hanging heavy in the air. As the door closed behind him, I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just a few hours ago, my life had been perfect, or so I thought. The sound of footsteps made me look up. Marian stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shame and pity. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning." I stared at her, my anger reigniting. "You knew? You knew about Greg's affair and his child, and you said nothing?" She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I wanted to protect my son, to protect our family, but I see now that I was only enabling his lies." "You're damn right you were," I snapped, rising to my feet. "And in the process, you betrayed me just as much as he did." Marian flinched at the venom in my words, but she didn't try to defend herself. She knew there was no excuse for her actions. "I never meant to hurt you, Evelyn," she said softly. "You've been like a daughter to me, and I've failed you in the worst way." Her words did little to soothe the ache in my heart. But as I looked at her, I saw a woman consumed by guilt and regret, and I knew that her punishment would be living with the consequences of her choices. "Just go," I said, my voice weary. "I can't deal with either of you right now." Marian nodded, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As she turned to leave, she paused and looked back at me. "For what it's worth, I'm on your side now," she said. "Whatever you need, I'll help you get the justice you deserve." I didn't respond, watching in silence as she left. Her offer rang hollow in my ears. The only thing I wanted was to go back in time, to a place where my life hadn't been shattered by the people I loved most. But that was impossible. All I could do now was pick up the pieces and try to rebuild something from the wreckage of my marriage. And if that meant seeking revenge on Greg, so be it. After Greg and Marian left, I felt utterly alone. The life I had built, the family I thought I had, it was all a lie. I needed someone in my corner, someone who could help me make sense of this nightmare. Loretta, my best friend, would know what to do. She had been through her own marital hell years ago, when her husband cheated. If anyone could understand the pain and betrayal I was feeling, it was her. I dialed her number with shaking hands, the tears I had been holding back finally spilling over. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" Loretta's concerned voice came through the line. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. How could I even begin to explain the depths of Greg's deception? "It's Greg," I managed finally. He had an affair. And there's a child, Loretta. He has a child with another woman." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Oh, honey," Loretta said softly. "I'm so sorry. I'm coming over right now, okay?" Relief washed over me. I needed Loretta's strength now more than ever. True to her word, she arrived at my doorstep 20 minutes later, enveloping me in a fierce hug as soon as I opened the door. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice gentle but firm as she led me to the couch. So I did. I poured out the whole sordid story, overhearing Greg and Marian's conversation, the revelations about his affair and secret child, his feeble attempts at justification. Loretta listened intently, her expression growing darker with each new detail. "That lying son of a bitch," she spat when I finished. "How could he do this to you, to your family?" I shook my head, feeling numb. I don't know. I thought our marriage was solid, that we were happy. But clearly I was just deluding myself. Loretta took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You are not to blame here, Evelyn. This is all on Greg and his selfish, despicable actions." Her words ignited a spark of determination within me. She was right. I wasn't the one who had betrayed our vows, our family. Greg was the one who had shattered everything we had built together. "I need to know the full truth," I said, my voice hardening. "I need to know every sordid detail of his affair, every lie he's told me over the years." Loretta nodded, her expression resolute. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll dig into this thing until we uncover every last secret Greg has been keeping from you." A sense of purpose washed over me. I was done being the victim in this story. It was time to take control and seek the justice I deserved. Over the next few days, Loretta and I became amateur detectives, scouring through Greg's emails, bank statements, anything that could shed light on his double life. and what we found only deepened the wound of his betrayal. Receipts for expensive jewelry and hotel stays. Tender emails exchanged with his mistress, filled with promises of a future together. Bank transfers to an account I had never known about, siphoning off money that should have been going to our family. With each new revelation, the man I thought I knew became more and more of a stranger. But the pain was tempered by a growing sense of determination. Greg had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it. The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a letter tucked away in a box of Greg's old things in the attic. It was from his mistress, Angela, written years ago, but still dripping with venom. "You promised we would be together," it read. "You promised to leave your wife and build a life with me and our son, but you were just using me, using us, and I'll never forgive you for that." Our son. The words hit me like a physical blow. So it was true. Greg had a child out there, a living, breathing human being that he had rejected and abandoned. As I read the letter again, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about Greg's betrayal of me anymore. It was about the lives he had destroyed, the innocent people he had hurt in his selfish pursuit of gratification. I looked at Loretta, my eyes blazing with a newfound sense of purpose. "We need to find this Angela," I said, my voice steely with determination. "And we need to make Greg pay for what he's done." Loretta nodded, a grim smile playing across her lips. "Whatever it takes, Evelyn. That bastard is going to wish he never crossed us." The path ahead was long and uncertain, but one thing was clear. Greg's web of lies was about to unravel, and I would be the one holding the scissors. Just when I thought the worst was over, the universe decided to throw another curveball my way. Jessica and Laura, my 2 daughters, came home for their regular weekend visit, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that had erupted in our family. As soon as they walked through the door, I could sense something was off. The usual warmth and laughter were replaced by a palpable tension that hung thick in the air. "Mom, is everything okay?" Jessica asked, ever the perceptive one. I forced a smile, not wanting to burden them with the truth just yet. "Of course, honey, why wouldn't it be?" Laura frowned, her brow furrowing. "Where's Dad? He's usually here to greet us." My heart clenched at the mention of Greg. How could I possibly explain his betrayal to our daughters, the 2 people he had sworn to love and protect above all else? "Your father," I began, but the words stuck in my throat. Jessica's eyes narrowed, and she exchanged a worried glance with her sister. "Mom, what's going on? You're scaring us." In that moment, I knew I couldn't keep them in the dark any longer. They deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "Girls, there's something I need to tell you," I said, gesturing for them to sit down. "It's about your father." I proceeded to lay out the sordid details of Greg's affair and the existence of his illegitimate child. With each revelation, their expressions morphed from confusion to disbelief to utter devastation. "No, that can't be true," Laura whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Dad would never do something like that." Jessica, ever the strong one, clenched her jaw, her eyes blazing with anger. "That lying bastard," she spat. "How could he do this to us, to our family?" I reached out to comfort them, but Laura recoiled from my touch, her body shaking with sobs. In that moment, I felt utterly helpless, unable to shield my daughters from the pain their father had inflicted upon us all. The sound of the front door opening made us all turn. Greg stood in the entryway, his expression a mix of guilt and apprehension. "Girls, I can explain," he began, but Jessica cut him off with a withering glare. "Save it, Dad," she snarled. "We know all about your little secret family." Greg flinched as if he'd been struck, his gaze shifting to me accusingly. "Evelyn, why would you tell them?" "They didn't need to know." "Didn't need to know?" I echoed incredulously. "They're your daughters, Greg. They deserve the truth, no matter how ugly it might be." Laura rose to her feet, her eyes red-rimmed but her expression hardening. "How could you do this to us, Dad? To Mom? We trusted you, and you betrayed us in the worst way possible." Greg opened his mouth, but no words came out. For once, the man who had spun a web of lies for years was rendered speechless. "I think you should leave," Jessica said, her voice low and dangerous. "We don't want you here right now." Greg looked like he wanted to protest, but one glance at the fury etched on our faces must have convinced him otherwise. He turned and left without another word, the weight of his actions hanging heavy in the air. As the door closed behind him, I gathered my daughters in a fierce embrace, our tears mingling together. In that moment, we were united in our pain and betrayal, like a bond forged by the man who had sworn to love and protect us above all else. "We'll get through this together," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Greg may have shattered our family, but he hasn't broken us." Jessica and Laura clung to me, their bodies shaking with sobs. But beneath the pain, I could sense a steely resolve taking root, a determination to make Greg pay for what he had done, no matter the cost. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but we would face it as a united front. Greg's lies had torn us apart, but they had also brought us closer together than ever before. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would emerge stronger and more resilient than ever before. In the aftermath of Greg's betrayal, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to curl up and lick my wounds, to retreat from the world that had so thoroughly shattered my illusions, but a stronger, more defiant part of me knew that I couldn't let Greg's actions define me. I needed to take control, to seek justice not just for myself, but for all the lives he had so carelessly upended. That's when I remembered Angela, Greg's former mistress, the woman he had used and discarded like a piece of trash. If anyone understood the depths of his deception, it was her. Tracking her down wasn't easy, but Loretta's investigative skills proved invaluable. After weeks of digging, we finally uncovered an address in a modest neighborhood across town. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Loretta asked as we pulled up to the nondescript house. "This woman has every reason to hate you." I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. "I have to try. She's the only one who can help me understand the full scope of what Greg has done." Loretta gave me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder before I made my way up the cracked sidewalk to the front door. With trembling fingers, I rang the bell. The door swung open, and a woman with tired eyes and a guarded expression stood before me. Even without an introduction, I knew this was Angela. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm Greg's wife." Her expression hardened, and for a moment I thought she might slam the door in my face. But then something shifted in her eyes, a glimmer of recognition, of shared pain. "I see," she said finally. "I suppose you're here about our son. Our son." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I refused to let my emotions show. "Among other things, yes. May I come in?" Angela hesitated for a moment before stepping aside, allowing me to enter the modest living room. As I took a seat on the well-worn couch, a teenage boy emerged from one of the bedrooms, his features a striking blend of Greg's and Angela's. "Tobias, this is Evelyn," Angela said, her voice softening as she addressed her son. She's your father's wife." Tobias's eyes widened, and he regarded me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. In that moment, I saw the weight of Greg's actions reflected in his eyes, the burden of being an unwanted secret, a constant reminder of his father's betrayal. "I won't beat around the bush," I said, turning my attention back to Angela. "I know about Greg's affair, and I know about Tobias. What I don't know is the full extent of his lies and manipulation." Angela's expression hardened once more, and she let out a bitter laugh. "Where do I even begin? Greg promised me the world. He said he would leave you, that we could be a real family. But it was all lies, just another way for him to get what he wanted without any real consequences." As she spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. Greg's frequent business trips, his unexplained absences, they had all been part of his double life, a life he had so carefully constructed to keep us all in the dark. "He left me to raise Tobias alone," Angela continued, her voice thick with emotion. "No child support, no acknowledgement of his existence, just empty promises and a lifetime of pain." I reached out and took her hand, my own eyes stinging with tears. "I'm so sorry," I said, the words feeling woefully inadequate. "You didn't deserve any of this." Angela squeezed my hand, her expression softening. "Neither did you, Evelyn. We were both victims of Greg's selfish games." In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Greg had torn our lives apart, but in doing so, he had also forged an unlikely bond between Angela, Tobias, and myself, a bond born of shared betrayal and a thirst for justice. "We can't let him get away with this," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "He needs to pay for what he's done to all of us." Angela nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. "I'm with you, Evelyn. It's time we made Greg face the consequences of his actions once and for all." Tobias stepped forward, his jaw set in a defiant line. "Count me in too. I want to know why my own father abandoned me, why he treated me like a dirty secret." In that moment, an unlikely alliance was formed. 3 people united by a common goal: to make Greg answer for his lies and seek the justice we all so desperately craved. It would be a long and difficult road, but together we were stronger than the web of deceit he had spun. As I looked at Angela and Tobias, I saw not just allies, but kindred spirits, people who had been wronged in the most profound way, but who refused to let that define them. We were survivors, fighters, and we would not rest until Greg's carefully constructed facade came crumbling down around him. The battle lines had been drawn, and there was no turning back. Greg had made his choices, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. With Angela and Tobias as unlikely allies, a plan began to take shape. We would confront Greg, lay bare the full extent of his lies and betrayal, and force him to face the consequences of his actions. But we couldn't do it alone. We needed to expose his web of deceit to the people closest to him, the ones he had so carefully kept in the dark. That's when Marian re-entered the picture. Despite her initial complicity in protecting Greg, she had ultimately chosen to stand by my side. Her eyes finally opened to the depths of her son's depravity. Together, we would make Greg's carefully constructed facade come crumbling down around him. The confrontation was set for a Sunday afternoon at a local restaurant, a public setting where Greg's lies would be laid bare for all to see. As Angela, Tobias, and I took our seats, my heart pounded with a mix of nervous anticipation and righteous fury. Greg arrived a few minutes later, his brow furrowed in confusion when he saw our unlikely gathering. "Evelyn, what's going on here?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Before I could respond, Marian stepped forward, her expression one of steely determination. "It's time you faced the truth, Gregory," she said, using his full name in a rare display of seriousness. "These people know everything about your lies, your betrayal, and they're here to make sure you can't hide from it any longer." Greg's eyes widened as he took in Angela and Tobias, realization dawning on his features. "You," he stammered, pointing an accusatory finger at Angela. "What lies have you been telling my wife?" Angela met his gaze unflinchingly. "The only lies here are the ones you've been spinning for years, Greg. It's time you owned up to the fact that you have a son, a child you abandoned without a second thought." Tobias stepped forward, his jaw set in a defiant line. "I'm not a secret anymore, Dad. I'm here in the flesh, and I want answers. Why did you leave us? Why did you treat me like I didn't even exist?" Greg's eyes darted around the restaurant, panic setting in as he realized the scene we were causing. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "Evelyn, you can't honestly believe these people over your own husband." I rose to my feet, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "Don't you dare try to play the victim here, Greg. I know everything, the affairs, the lies, the secret bank accounts. You've been living a double life for years, and it's time you paid the price for it." Greg opened his mouth to respond, but Marian cut him off, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Don't even try to deny it, son," she spat. "I've seen the evidence with my own eyes. You've disgraced our family, disgraced everything we stand for, all for your own selfish desires." The restaurant had fallen silent, all eyes trained on our explosive confrontation. Greg looked around wildly, his carefully cultivated persona crumbling before our very eyes. "You're all delusional?" he snarled, his composure finally cracking. "Evelyn, how could you believe these people over me, your own husband?" I met his gaze, my eyes hard and unyielding. "Because they're not the ones who betrayed me, Greg. You are, and now everyone is going to know exactly what kind of man you really are." With those words, the dam broke. Angela, Tobias, and I laid out the sordid details of Greg's double life, his lies and manipulations, his utter disregard for the people he had sworn to love and protect. And with each damning revelation, Greg's protests grew weaker, his excuses more feeble. By the time we were finished, the entire restaurant was enveloped in a stunned silence. Greg stood alone, his reputation in tatters, his carefully constructed facade shattered beyond repair. As he turned to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat, Marian called out to him one final time. "You've made your bed, Gregory," she said, her voice laced with disappointment and regret. "Now you can lie in it, alone." And just like that, the man who had once been the center of my world was gone, reduced to a mere shadow of the person I thought I had known. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of liberation, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. With Greg's lies had nearly destroyed me, but in the end, they had only made me stronger. With Angela, Tobias, and my newfound support system at my side, I was ready to start rebuilding my life on my own terms, a life free from the shackles of deception and betrayal. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Greg had played his games, spun his lies, but in the end, the truth had prevailed. And as I looked around at the faces of my allies, my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united by our shared strength and resilience. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. And this time, I was the one calling the shots. In the aftermath of our explosive confrontation with Greg, the shockwaves rippled through every aspect of our lives. His carefully constructed facade had been shattered, leaving him exposed and vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. Within days, the news of his betrayal had spread like wildfire through our social circles. Friends and acquaintances who had once admired and respected him now looked upon him with a mix of disgust and pity. Greg's reputation, the very thing he had worked so hard to cultivate, was in tatters. But as Greg's world crumbled around him, mine was just beginning to rebuild. With Angela, Tobias, and my newfound support system at my side, I felt a sense of empowerment and purpose that had been missing for far too long. Marion, once Greg's staunchest defender, was now one of my closest allies. The guilt and shame she felt over enabling her son's lies had given way to a fierce determination to make amends, to stand by my side as I navigated this new chapter of my life. "I failed you, Evelyn," she said to me one afternoon, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I let my blind devotion to Gregory cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I betrayed the woman who has been like a daughter to me." I reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "What's done is done, Marion. All we can do now is move forward together." She nodded, her expression resolute. "You have my word, Evelyn. From this day forward, I will be the ally and support system you deserve. Gregory has made his choices, and now he must face the consequences." True to her word, Marion became a pillar of strength in the days and weeks that followed. As Greg's desperate attempts to reconcile were met with stony silence from all corners, she stood firm in her rejection of his pleas. "You brought this upon yourself, son," she told him during one particularly heated exchange. "You betrayed not just Evelyn, but this entire family. And for what? A fleeting moment of selfish pleasure?" Greg, once so confident and self-assured, withered under his mother's withering gaze. It was a stark reminder of just how far he had fallen, how thoroughly his lies had alienated him from those who had once been his biggest supporters. As for me, I found myself buoyed by a newfound sense of independence and purpose. The job I had once seen as a mere means to an end had taken on a new significance, a way for me to assert my self-worth and financial independence. It was during this time that an unexpected opportunity presented itself. A managerial position, one that would not only provide greater financial security, but also a chance to prove my leadership capabilities. "You've more than earned this, Evelyn," my boss told me as she extended the offer. "Your resilience and determination in the face of such personal turmoil have been an inspiration to us all." I accepted without hesitation, relishing the chance to take control of my own destiny. No longer would I be defined by Greg's actions or the life he had tried to force upon me. This was my chance to forge my own path, to show the world that I was more than just a victim of circumstance. As I settled into my new role, I found myself drawing strength from the support system that had rallied around me. Angela, once a bitter rival, had become a trusted confidant, her own experiences with Greg's betrayal giving her a unique perspective on the challenges I faced. "We're survivors, Evelyn," she told me one evening as we shared a bottle of wine. "Greg tried to break us, but in the end, he only made us stronger." Tobias, too, had become an integral part of my life, a constant reminder of the collateral damage wrought by Greg's selfish actions. As he navigated the turbulent waters of adolescence, I found myself drawn to his quiet strength and resilience, qualities that had been forged in the fires of his father's abandonment. Together, we formed an unlikely family unit, bound not by blood but by a shared experience of betrayal and a determination to rise above it. And as the months passed, I found myself looking to the future with a sense of hope and optimism that had been sorely lacking for far too long. Greg's desperate attempts to worm his way back into our lives were met with a united front of indifference and disdain. He had made his choices, and now he would have to live with the consequences, a life spent on the fringes, a mere shadow of the man he had once been. As for me, I was done living in his shadow. With each passing day, I felt myself growing stronger, more confident in my ability to forge my own path. The scars of Greg's betrayal would never fully heal, but they had become a badge of honor, a testament to my resilience and determination to rise above the ashes of my former life. And as I looked ahead to the future, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, surrounded by the love and support of those who had become my true family. A family forged not by blood, but by the fires of adversity and the unbreakable bonds of sisterhood. In the months that followed Greg's downfall, a profound shift took place within our unlikely sisterhood. What had begun as a shared mission of revenge and retribution evolved into something far more profound, a movement dedicated to empowering and supporting women who had faced similar betrayals. It started small, with Loretta, Angela, Marian, and I meeting for weekly coffee dates, sharing our stories and offering each other the kind of understanding and solidarity that could only come from those who had walked the same painful path. But word soon spread, and before long, our little gathering had grown into a full-fledged support group, a safe haven for women seeking to rebuild their lives in the aftermath of betrayal. "We're more than just survivors," Loretta declared at one of our early meetings. "We're warriors, fighters who have stared down the darkness and emerged stronger on the other side." Her words resonated deeply with all of us, a rallying cry for the resilience and determination that had carried us through our darkest hours. We were no longer victims, defined by the actions of the men who had wronged us. We were women in control of our own destinies, forging new paths on our own terms. As our numbers grew, so too did our sense of purpose. We began organizing workshops and seminars, sharing our stories, and offering practical advice on everything from navigating the legal system to rebuilding self-esteem in the wake of emotional trauma. Marian, ever the matriarch, took a particular interest in mentoring the younger women in our group, offering a wisdom and perspective that could only come from a lifetime of experience. "You are not defined by the actions of others," she would say, her voice firm but laced with warmth. "You are strong, capable women with the power to shape your own futures." Angela, too, became a driving force within our movement, her own experiences with Greg's betrayal lending a raw authenticity to her words. She and Tobias formed an unbreakable bond, a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. "We may have been dealt a tough hand," Angela would tell our group, her arm draped protectively around her son's shoulders, "but it's up to us to decide how we play the cards we're given." As for me, I found myself drawn into a leadership role almost by default. My story, the public unraveling of Greg's lies, had become a rallying cry for women seeking to reclaim their power and agency. And as my newfound confidence and independence blossomed, so too did my determination to use my platform to inspire and empower others. "We are not victims," I would say, my voice ringing out with conviction. "We are survivors, warriors who have faced down the darkness and emerged stronger on the other side." My words seemed to strike a chord, resonating with women from all walks of life who had found themselves betrayed and belittled by the men who were supposed to love and cherish them. And as our movement grew, so too did the sense of sisterhood and solidarity that bound us together. Jessica and Laura, my own daughters, became active participants in our group, their own experiences with their father's betrayal fueling a fierce determination to support and uplift other women facing similar struggles. It was a source of immense pride for me, watching them channel their pain into a force for positive change. "We may have been dealt a tough hand," Laura would say, echoing Angela's words. But we're not going to let it define us. We're going to use it as fuel to build something better, something stronger. And build we did. What had started as a small gathering of wounded souls quickly blossomed into a powerful movement, a force for change and empowerment that stretched far beyond the confines of our little support group. We organized fundraisers and awareness campaigns, partnering with local shelters and advocacy organizations to provide resources and support for women in crisis. We lobbied for stronger legal protections and harsher penalties for those who perpetrated emotional and financial abuse. And through it all, we remained a tight-knit sisterhood, bound by our shared experiences and an unwavering commitment to lifting each other up. We celebrated each other's triumphs, big and small, and offered a shoulder to lean on during the inevitable setbacks and challenges. As for Greg, he had become little more than a footnote in our lives, a cautionary tale of what happens when selfishness and deceit are allowed to fester unchecked. His desperate attempts to reconcile or insert himself back into our lives were met with a wall of indifference, a stark reminder that he had forfeited his place in our world the moment he chose to betray us. In the end, his legacy would be one of pain and disappointment, a cautionary tale of what happens when a man puts his own desires above the well-being of those he claims to love. But our legacy, the legacy of the women he had wronged, would be one of resilience, strength, and unwavering sisterhood. As I looked around at the faces of the women who had become my chosen family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and pride. We had been through hell and back, but we had emerged on the other side stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but one thing was clear. We would face it together, united by our shared experiences and an unbreakable bond of sisterhood. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would meet them head-on, armed with the knowledge that we were warriors, survivors who had stared down the darkness and emerged victorious.
I was scheduled to go on a business trip for a week. It meant leaving my husband and daughter alone at home. To ease my worries, my husband firmly said, "Leave it to me." We stayed in regular contact for the week, and it seemed like there were no particular problems. However, when I returned from the business trip, my daughter looked terribly ill. According to my husband, it seems she caught a cold. She was sound asleep, making it difficult to take her to the hospital. Feeling exhausted from work myself, I decided to sleep right away that day. The next day, to my shock, my daughter collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. The doctor began to talk about the cause of the collapse. Stunned, I confront my husband and he becomes evasive. My name is Megan Adams, and I'm 35 years old. I work hard as a company employee for the sake of my family. My family consists of my husband Aaron, who is the same age as me, and our daughter, Kendra. We live in an apartment together. Aaron met me at a mixer that a friend invited me to. He caught my attention because he was quiet and didn't seem to talk to anyone, so I took the initiative to start a conversation with him. I wondered why Aaron, with his gentle and modest personality, was like that. I must say I've always been the type to be at the center of the class since my student days. I can't leave quiet kids alone and always end up meddling. Aaron used to say shyly in the past, "When I'm with you, Megan, I feel relieved and reassured." Upon hearing that, I thought, I want to protect this person, and ended up marrying him. However, after marriage, I came to realize that this choice was a mistake. I was working vigorously as the top salesperson in the company. In addition to leading my subordinates, I was also responsible for mentoring newcomers. I was entrusted with the role of project manager for new projects and often went on business trips for presentations. Although I was busy, I loved my job and was willing to work as hard as necessary for my family. On the other hand, Aaron seemed to have been given mundane tasks such as managing the file room at the company. He didn't seem to take his job very seriously, and his income was only about half of mine, if not less. When Aaron came home from work, he wouldn't offer to help with household chores, but would just lie on the sofa playing mobile games. When I nagged him or complained, he reluctantly helped with the housework. He never did anything voluntarily. In the worst cases, he pretends to babysit Kendra and uses it as an excuse to push all the housework onto me. Even during babysitting, he's just holding his mobile game with one hand and glancing at Kendra. Hey, could you please stop playing games and play with Kendra for a bit? Aaron would not listen to my warnings.
You're always so annoying. You don't have to worry so much. Kendra seems to be having fun playing alone. You're too naggy.
It's situations like this that gives me a headache. I wanted to talk to someone about it, but there was no one I could consult with. My in-laws dote on their son, Aaron. Especially my mother-in-law, who engages in classic daughter-in-law bullying, saying things like, "Make sure Aaron eats more nutritious food," or "Housework is the wife's job." My in-laws intend to live with us after retirement. That's also been a concern for me. Since the beginning of our marriage, I've dreamed of the two of us working hard together and owning our own home. That dream is now crumbling before my eyes. Our life has deviated far from that ideal. However, with a daughter in the picture, I can't bring myself to divorce. I didn't want to make my daughter grow up in a single-parent household, and I'm also feeling uneasy about the uneven split of assets with Aaron. One day, my husband approached me with a gleaming look and made this plea.
I've had an awakening. I'm going to put more effort into my work.
Aaron's sudden statement surprised me. He never showed any intention of taking work seriously before, so what brought about this change? Oh, does that mean you'll be working hard on organizing the file room?
Exactly. I'm going to become a specialist in file room management. I'm sorry for causing so much trouble up until now. From now on, I'll also be earning for the family.
Aaron declared this confidently to me. I'm not sure what led to his change, but he seems genuinely determined to try harder. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but if he's motivated to work, then that's good. I see. I understand. I'll support you, so do your best. Perhaps he is trying to make a difference there and get a promotion. I don't know how it will turn out, but it's better than nothing. With that in mind, I decided to support Aaron. Looking back now, I realize my thinking was too naive. But back then, I still had trust and affection for Aaron. Since then, Aaron, who used to always come home on time, started working overtime and coming in on weekends. He seems to be working seriously, even doing some work on his computer at home. My husband also started playing with Kendra more often. I was truly impressed by the change in him. Although I remained busy as usual, his efforts inspired me to work even harder. I made an effort not to bring work home and focused on completing tasks at the office to ensure Kendra wouldn't feel lonely. Meanwhile, the expectations from the company were unexpectedly high. I was appointed as the head of a huge project that could change the fate of the company. Moreover, due to the project, I would have to go on a business trip for about a week, so I decided to discuss it with my husband. And then...
That's amazing to be entrusted with such a big job. You should go. I still have paid leave left, so I'll take responsibility for Kendra and watch over her properly.
Aaron says so with a smile, without blaming me. His words were reassuring, but I couldn't help feeling unsure if it was really okay. But for a whole week? You've been working so hard.
It's all right. It's because I work hard regularly that the company trusts me. My boss is understanding, so he'll excuse me for taking care of the kids if needed.
But taking care of Kendra will be tough, you know. She's a good kid, but still so young. Can you handle feeding her and giving her a bath properly?
No problem. I've been getting better at childcare lately. So trust me and leave it to me like you're boarding a big ship.
If you say so. I understand. Take care of Kendra for a while then. I decided to rely on his words and left for a week-long business trip with a heavy heart. Still worried, I called home several times during the trip. According to Aaron, Kendra seemed fine even without me. But there was one thing that bothered me. I hadn't heard Kendra's voice once during the week-long trip. Even when I asked my husband to let me hear her voice, he said she was either asleep or having a meal. Well, if she hears my voice, Kendra might throw a tantrum. I was a bit worried, but Aaron was with her, so it should be okay. I convinced myself against my better judgment, unaware that I would later regret it. I managed to complete the trip somehow, despite various difficulties. When I returned home at night, Aaron greeted me with a
"Welcome back."
However, I couldn't see Kendra anywhere. Huh? What happened to Kendra? Isn't it too early for her to be sleeping? When I asked, Aaron replied with a somewhat awkward expression.
"It seems like she caught a cold."
What? Hastily, I went to check on her condition and found her sleeping in the children's room. Despite being apart for just 1 week, she looked much thinner and had a pale face. As I approached, there was a faint odor, and Kendra's collar was slightly dirty.
"She caught a cold today, so I didn't bathe her. I tried to change her clothes, but she cried and refused, so I let her sleep as is."
I see. Is she okay? Should we take her to the hospital even now? When I suggested this, Aaron hurriedly stopped me.
No, she ate plenty, so she'll be fine. You can trust that I took care of her."
But
"It's so unfair to wake Kendra up when she's sleeping so soundly like this, don't you think? It's better for her to rest and recover slowly. You must be tired too, so don't push yourself."
certainly, there was some truth in what Aaron said. I may be worrying too much, and Kendra might just recover nicely by morning. After much deliberation, I decided that if Kendra still seemed unwell in the morning, I would take her to the hospital. That day, I was also exhausted from a business trip, so I went to bed early. However, the next morning brought a turn of events. While preparing breakfast, I heard Kendra's voice from behind saying, "Mommy?" Kendra staggered towards me, her complexion pale and her eyes vacant. Worried, I asked her, "What's wrong?" But she didn't respond. Instead, she collapsed right there. I instinctively screamed and rushed to Kendra's side. "Kendra, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I desperately called out to Kendra, but Kendra remained limp and didn't wake up. Aaron, who had just woken up, exclaimed,
"Huh? What's going on?"
I thought something was seriously wrong with my daughter, so I tried to call an ambulance. But for some reason, Aaron tried to stop me.
No, calling an ambulance is too much. It'll just cause a nuisance to the neighbors, won't it? It's just a cold, so letting her rest should be enough."
Frustrated by Aaron's nonchalant remarks, I exclaimed, "Huh? How can you say that in this situation? With such a terrible complexion, there's no way it's just a cold, right? Save your excuses for later." Ignoring Aaron, who kept on talking, I dialed 911 without hesitation. Later, Kendra was urgently transported by ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor explained Kendra's symptoms.
"Dehydrated and malnourished. You two haven't been feeding her properly, have you? As per protocol, I'll have to report both of you."
I was stunned by the doctor's words. While I was away, Aaron was supposed to take good care of Kendra. Yet why did a diagnosis like malnutrition and dehydration come up? I couldn't help but confront Aaron. "What on earth is going on here? Didn't you say you were taking care of Kendra properly?"
I don't know. It can't be like this. This has to be some kind of mistake. I did take care of her properly."
My husband was nearly frantic, trying to justify himself to me. However, his eyes were restless, his complexion was pale, and his behavior was suspicious. After a while, the police arrived, and we were each interrogated separately. My alibi of being on a business trip was proven, and with Kendra regaining consciousness and testifying, I was acquitted. On the other hand, Aaron was taken away by the police. As Kendra calmed down and spoke, a surprising fact came to light. It turns out that Aaron had left Kendra alone at home for a week. My husband left 2 bottles of water and $20 on the table for Kendra, instructing her to buy bread at the nearby convenience store.
"It's a secret from Mom. If you keep it secret, I'll buy you the character-themed toy you've been wanting."
Before leaving, Aaron apparently said that to Kendra. However, Kendra couldn't open the water bottles and, with a dry throat, tried to drink from the sink, but she couldn't reach it, so she could only drink only a little. Moreover, even when she went to the convenience store, she didn't know what to buy, so she only bought a few snacks. During the week I was away, Kendra couldn't get proper nutrition and suffered from dehydration. At just 4 years old, Kendra couldn't ask for help from the neighbors or call me. Everything Aaron said about Kendra over the phone was a lie. I was boiling with anger. But where on earth was Aaron going, leaving his daughter behind? I decided to investigate him. I brought Kendra home after she recovered and took care of her exclusively. After Kendra fell asleep, I decided to check Aaron's desktop computer in the study. I had seen him type in the password before, so I knew it. And then an astonishing truth came to light. That idiot. I'll never forgive him. A few days later, Aaron called, and he was furious.
Hey, what's going on here? Why is the house empty? There's no furniture or belongings. Where are you and Kendra now?
Aaron, who had been thoroughly questioned by the police, seemed quite surprised when he returned home. And for good reason, as the house was empty, neither my daughter nor I were anywhere to be found. When Aaron, with an anxious tone, asked me questions, I responded calmly and matter-of-factly. We moved. That's why. Your belongings are temporarily stored in a rental storage. Go and pick them up later by yourself.
Huh? Don't mess around. What are you doing acting on your own?
Don't mess around? That's my line. Just when I thought you were neglecting Kendra, it turns out you were cheating. I'm truly disgusted. Upon my words, Aaron muttered,
Huh?
And froze. He probably hadn't expected his affair to be exposed. There was plenty of evidence of his infidelity. The other woman was a 25-year-old part-time worker at his company. Aaron was not working on his computer at home for work, but rather exchanging emails with her. All his claims of overtime and working on holidays were lies. He had been spending time on his affair. It seems even when I was away on a business trip for a week, he was constantly at his mistress's apartment. Since the apartment we lived in was under my name, I decided to vacate it promptly. Currently, Kendra and I are staying at my parents' house. I'll discuss divorce matters through a lawyer. I've already claimed damages from your affair partner. You better prepare to pay child support and damages too. Upon my words, Aaron desperately apologized over the phone.
I'm sorry. Things were going well at work and I was tempted by her. If you don't want me to, fine, I won't see her anymore. From now on, I'll devote myself to you and Kendra. So please spare me the divorce.
Aaron's words didn't move my heart at all. Instead, I looked down on him for trying to shift the blame onto his affair partner. There's no way I can believe a word you say. Working hard? If I trusted you, I wouldn't have been cheated on so easily. I was foolish to be deceived.
Please forgive me. I truly regret what I've done.
There's no way I can forgive you. Leaving 4-year-old Kendra alone to go to your affair partner's place? What were you planning to do if something happened to her? You're unfit to be a father. Don't ever come near me and Kendra again. With that, I hung up the phone. After, I was able to divorce Aaron successfully. Custody of Kendra naturally fell to me. The compensation and child support were paid in one lump sum by Aaron's family. Aaron, who was already slacking off at work, turned out to have taken a sick day instead of a paid day off that day. In other words, it was a sneaky day off. When his affair and sneaky absence were both exposed at work, Aaron resigned. Currently, he's working day jobs to repay the compensation and child support paid by his parents. His affair partner also ended up in debt and paid me the compensation in one lump sum. She has already quit her job and seems to be chased by debt collectors every day. I, on the other hand, have moved into a secure apartment with Kendra, and I'm spending my Kendra days in peace and quiet. If my trip had been longer, my daughter's life could have been at stake. I'm relieved that Kendra is safe. From now on, even if it's for work, I'll refuse overnight business trips. Fortunately, with my track record, my work is going smoothly. In the future, I want to prioritize my daughter and watch her grow.
I am Ella, 28 years old. My favorite things are white rice, rice balls, and just rice. Yes, I am a slightly chubby new mother who loves rice with all her heart. I've loved white rice since I was a child, and my mother used to be amazed when I told her that I ate rice from morning to night. My love for rice knows no boundaries. And I even went on a study at a university in the food industry to develop delicious recipes that will go well with rice. It was there I met my current husband, Daniel. We were in the same class, and I was thrilled when he told me that he was a rice farmer. I was born and raised in the city and didn't know anyone who was a rice farmer. He came to the city because he didn't like the fact that his family was a farmer in the countryside. He seemed to be inspired by my love of rice and the fact that I ate it so deliciously every day. After graduation, I followed him back to the countryside to take over the farmhouse, and 2 years later, we got married. Now I work as a dietitian at a nursing home, and I'm always helping with the rice planting and harvesting. The eldest son, who had moved to the city saying he would not take over the family business, came back with a prospective wife, and my in-laws were in a frenzy. Moreover, my husband. If Ella hadn't been smiling so broadly and chomping down on rice balls at that moment, I wouldn't have had any intention of taking over the farm. Would say that, so I am worshipped like a goddess in my in-laws' house. My in-laws are gentle people to begin with, so when they decided to build a house on their property, I had no resistance. I get to eat delicious rice from a rice-producing region every day. My husband and in-laws would not have gone out of business. It was a win-win situation, and we were enjoying our home very much. Our long-awaited first child was born. He was a boy, and we named him Jack. Since there's still a strong sense in our community that the firstborn son has to be the heir of the family, my in-laws, relatives, and neighbors were all overjoyed. Having my beloved husband's child and being blessed by so many people made my days the happiest of my life. My son, who was loved by everyone around me, turned 4 months old. So I decided to go to the health center for a checkup. I was surrounded by babies the same age as my son, and I was excited to think that one day children would become friends with Jack. As I waited for my turn to see the doctor, chatting happily with the kind-looking mother sitting next to me, I suddenly heard a voice above my head. "Where did you buy those luxury brand clothes?" "What?" I looked up towards the voice and saw a woman with long hair looking down at me and my son. I was puzzled by the sudden question without any form of greeting, but she seemed to be the same new mother and answered with a smile. "Well, my mother-in-law bought it for me, so I don't know." She wiggled her thin eyebrows at my answer. "Wow, your mother-in-law dictates what you wear? That must be tough." "What? Really?" I did hear about a friend of mine who was having trouble with her mother-in-law buying clothes for her, but I was grateful because I'm not that particular and my mother-in-law has good taste. I didn't even know these clothes were a luxury brand in the first place. I felt uncomfortable as she stared at me with her eyes as if she was trying to decide what to wear. I was wondering whether I should leave my seat by pretending to change a diaper when she said to me, "I'll take those clothes off your hand." "What?" I was so confused I didn't know what she meant, but she started to take off my son's clothes. Hey, what are you doing?" She was blatantly miffed when I hurriedly picked up my son into my arms. "You don't want the clothes your mother-in-law bought for you, so I'm gonna take them." "Huh? No thanks. In the first place, if I give you the clothes he's wearing now, what is my son supposed to wear home? Why don't you just wrap a towel around him and go home? Don't worry, it's not that cold today." "No way am I doing that." She was saying something crazy as if it was a matter of course, and my head was in a turmoil. Still, I tried my best to protect my son from getting hurt. Maria, what's wrong? A public health nurse, hearing the commotion, came between us with calm movements. If there's anything bothering you, I'm here to listen. Please, come this way. The nurse gently but firmly led her to another room. Maria, as she was called, clicked her tongue and was taken away by the nurse. Are you okay? Yes. The woman next to me, whom I had been having a friendly conversation with earlier, looked at me with concern. Apparently, she had brought that nurse to the scene, and I thanked the woman. I wiped away a cold sweat, thinking about the crazy people in this world. The next day, when I thought such an unpleasant thing would never happen... Huh? What's wrong, Ella? As I was about to take in the laundry I had it hung out to dry in the evening, I'd noticed something odd. One of Jack's clothes was missing. The clothes of my son who had come for his checkup yesterday, I couldn't find that one of his clothing items, let alone the hanger. Oh no, maybe the wind blew it away. I'm sorry, but you bought it for my son, too. My mother-in-law soothed me with a smile and I was feeling down. It's okay. I have another chance to buy clothes for my grandson. Just kidding. I couldn't help but smile at my mother-in-law's playful and kind attitude, even though I'd been feeling down. I know, let's go shopping tomorrow. Let me know what you like. Okay. Thanks to my mother-in-law's concern, the case of my son's missing clothes was supposed to be resolved peacefully. However, 5 days later, my son's clothes went missing again. As it was a slightly expensive item my mother-in-law had recently bought for him, even my mother-in-law was suspicious, looking around the yard. Still, we couldn't make a big deal out of the loss of 2 pieces of clothing, so we did nothing about it. 3 days later, after lunch, while dealing with a delivery service, we suddenly looked around the entrance and realized what had happened. The day before, we had been caught in a rainstorm while taking a walk and we could not find our stroller, which was supposed to be drying out on the porch. Miss Julia, do you know what happened to the stroller? What? No, I don't. That's weird. The stroller was also a gift from my mother-in-law. Moreover, it was a sturdy and stable foreign brand so that my son could go out with peace of mind. I felt my heart race, and that's when I decided. I was convinced that both the baby clothes and the stroller had been stolen. Whoever it was had stolen my precious son's things. I was boiling with anger. I'm reporting this to the police. As I was taking out my phone, my mother-in-law stopped me. Calling the police over missing stroller is crazy. But the stroller and the clothes are precious things that you bought for my son. I knew what she did. My mother-in-law used the computer, which she's not good at using, to gather information when buying baby items. I know that she was truly happy about the birth of my son, and that she took good care of my body and gave me good things. I will never forgive anyone who tramples on my mother-in-law's goodwill. Ella! My mother-in-law stared at me and sighed, troubled and happy. All right, but don't contact the police. But, as if to calm me down, she says, a missing stroller won't get the police to make a move. I'll find the culprit more efficiently. You go take a nap with Jack. After saying this, my mother-in-law picked up her address book and began making phone calls. Listening to the leaked conversation, I couldn't help but be impressed by my mother-in-law's acting ability and skillful speech. Surely, in the countryside, we might not be able to find the culprit this way. As I predicted, the culprit was easily found 3 days later. My mother-in-law thought it was someone who lived nearby, judging by the manner of theft. So my mother-in-law's only action was to make tearful phone calls to the wives in the neighborhood to complain about the damage that was caused. With that, the wives all worked together to gather information. The neighborhood's high opinion of me as a wife who came to the city and did not mind taking care of the rice paddies led me to a powerful response. Well, maybe they're just amused onlookers, but my mother-in-law made a lot of phone calls. By the end of the day, the information had spread throughout the entire neighborhood association, and one of the wives gave me a valuable eyewitness report that she had seen a similar stroller in a neighboring town. Based on this information, we questioned the farmer's wife, who lived in the next town, and she admitted to the crime. The network in the countryside is quite frightening. I was then surprised by a woman who visited our house with a baby stroller accompanied by her husband. She was the woman who had tried to rip off my son's clothes at his 4-month checkup. Apparently, she had followed me home after the checkup while pushing the stroller. I was shocked by the abnormality of being obsessed with someone you have only spoken to once, and horrified at the fact that such a person knew about our house. Her husband was trying his best to apologize, but she was looking as if she were flustered. Did you steal the clothes too? Hey, you even stole clothes? Her husband is pale, but she doesn't even change her expression. What? I only took it because she looked like she didn't want it, she said. Of course I want them. The clothes and the stroller are precious things given to me by my mother-in-law. I don't like that kind of attitude. Huh? She stared at me with hatred in her dead eyes until a moment ago. You're so obsessed with your mother-in-law. You live with her in the countryside because you're poor, aren't you? Don't you have any pride? Huh? My mother-in-law put her hand on my shoulder. I was about to start a fight with her because of her rude attitude. Please, take that stroller home. I will buy a new one for my grandson. I will forward you the bill, she says. What? I brought it all the way here. What are you talking about? Ignoring her rant, my mother-in-law spoke to Maria's husband. Sir, your wife seems to have very sticky fingers. This isn't the first time she's stolen something, is it? What? The blood quickly drained from her husband's face. I heard all about it. I heard you guys were living in this city, but you suddenly moved here as if you were running away. My mother-in-law pointed out a definite fact. Oh no. Her face also turned bloodthirsty. You thought that in the countryside, people would forgive you for a little indiscretion, didn't you? But you know the countryside is scary. Prepare yourself. The two of them were blandly flabbergasted by my mother-in-law, who approached them quietly and unobtrusively, but without averting her eyes, and ran off as if to get away. Miss Julia, how much do you know about the couple? I asked my mother-in-law. She said she quit her part-time job before coming in here because of her pregnancy, but was fired for skimming money from the co-workers in the cash register. She said something she did similar at her husband's company's house and moved away to escape. I heard that her pregnancy was real and she didn't turn herself into the police of the warmth of the people around her. I wonder what will happen to her in the future, since she caused such a commotion in such rural areas. I see. It is really scary in the countryside, where you get so much information in just 3 days. My mother-in-law laughed bitterly, and I returned a small smile. I swore from the bottom of my heart I would never do anything bad. As my mother-in-law had read, she had been misbehaving in many places. People who found out that we had been looted again to come forward and say that they have also been victims of stealing. Each one may be trivial, but the fact remains that she did a lot of evil deeds. Maria's mother-in-law and husband went around apologizing, bowing their heads to everyone. However, she stayed at home and showed no remorse for her wrongdoings. Because of that attitude, the people around her were looking away from her, as if the house was built by an unbelievable wife. It seems that her mother-in-law paid for almost half the cost of what she had done in that town, and when she came to the countryside, she had become a better person. They are disgusted that she came to the countryside and repeatedly did her misdeeds without any apology. I guess Maria's mother-in-law could not stand being ostracized by her neighbors. If you don't divorce your wife, I will give all the inheritance of the house to your brother. She gave Maria's husband, her eldest son, an ultimatum. The husband, who had completely been fed up with his wife, was encouraged by the ultimatum and immediately decided to divorce her. Of course, Maria did not agree with it. One day, about a month after the stroller fiasco, she stormed into her house with an angry face and made steam come out of her head. "Hey, I'm getting a divorce because of you. My son has been taken away from me by my husband and his mother, and you're taking the blame." As I happened to be home alone, I was against her sniving and blaming me, and calmly replied to her words. "You deserved it. Grapes, chicken eggs, watermelons. The damage of various farmers was all you're doing. It's better for a child to grow up without a problematic mother like you. What is wrong with you? There are so many crops out there, it wouldn't be a problem if I took a little bit of it. I thought the country people were more open-minded. What happened to the spirit of mutual help? This woman is crazy. Have you ever done anything to help others or anything else that would make people grateful? Ugh. In the first place, how can you be allowed to steal the crops that have been carefully nurtured like your own child? The same goes for your baby products. They were bought with money that my mother-in-law obtained through the hard work. What? You're acting like a good girl. It's disgusting. I don't care if you find me disgusting. Just smile and be serious, and you'll get a full meal of delicious rice. It's great. Wow, you're finally showing your true colors. Just when she smiled that snickering smile. That's fine, a voice behind her said. What? Before I knew it, my mother-in-law, who had returned from working in the fields, came up next to me and laughed at her. It's a blessing to be a rice farmer, and I have a woman who fell in love with our rice and came to marry my son. It's great to have a wife who smiles and helps out in the rice paddies and happily eats her rice. But it's much, much better than a wife like you who only knows how to steal. Ugh. Now why don't you go back to the city you love so much? Or should I call the police? What? I guess she was so shocked that the bond between me and my mother-in-law was so strong, and it completely overturned her outlook on life. She ran away screaming like a child. Oh, I hope she doesn't ever come back here again. I remember my line earlier about being able to eat a full meal of delicious rice while praying that she would never go back. Oh, no, of course. I wasn't just attracted by the rice, you know. I married my husband because I love him too, you know. After the rice, right? I look at my understanding, kind mother-in-law and laugh. The watered rice fields were sparkling in the spring sunlight. My mother-in-law was furious at Maria's unrepentant behavior when she stormed into her house after that. She demanded an immediate lump sum refund of the damage payment she had taken on her shoulders. Naturally, Mia was unable to repay the money, and her flamboyant and confident appearance from the line we first met was just a shadow of her former self. She left the town with shaggy hair and tattered clothes. She would probably end up living a life of debauchery, working in some bar somewhere in the middle of nowhere. 5 months have passed since then, and it is time to take our son, who gradually switched from baby food to regular food. The rice that Daddy made is delicious, isn't it? Mama. Yes, nothing beats fresh rice. Dada. My husband, who was eating next to me, laughed as I chatted with my son while feeding him porridge. Jack is gonna grow up to be a rice lover, isn't he? Of course. He's a happy child who always loved delicious rice by his side. Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law look at us with smiles. Surrounded by my favorite rice and a kind family, I am full of happiness.
During my daughter's funeral, her mother-in-law turns pale and starts shaking at the words of her grandson, who has mysterious powers.
I attended my daughter's funeral without being able to sort out my thoughts. My 27-year-old daughter had suddenly passed away. As I stared blankly at her house, my 4-year-old grandson pulled on my skirt and murmured a shocking phrase. And my daughter's mother-in-law, who was nearby, listening to those words, turned pale. Her tragic end was just beginning. I'm Tina, a 50-year-old housewife, and I work part-time at a local diner. I have a daughter named Lauren. She got married to her husband Keith when she was 21. At first, she lived with her in-laws, but she couldn't get along with her mother-in-law. So they live separately now. No grandchildren yet, Lauren. How many years has it been since you got married? You are really useless. You were not fulfilling your role as a daughter-in-law. It seems that she was repeatedly blamed by her mother-in-law about children until her grandson Alex was born. Furthermore, you can't have children because you are always working, can't you? Don't neglect your housework because of work. At that time, my daughter and her husband were both working, but she was also burdened with housework at her in-laws' house. Moreover, it seems that she was even nagged about the details of housework.
I want to be recognized as a good daughter-in-law, you know?
Although she was enthusiastic about it when she started living with them, as time went on, she began to complain more and more.
No matter what I do, my mother-in-law complains. I mean, she should just do it herself.
Her in-laws' house was a 5-hour flight from where I lived. I felt frustrated that I couldn't rush to my daughter when she's in need. Lauren, honey, if it's too tough, come back here once in a while. You need to take a break from your job as a daughter-in-law too, you know?
Thank you, Mom, but I'm okay. Sorry to worry you. Can I talk to you about my complaints again sometime?
I couldn't say anything more to my daughter who said that. After that, I was often told about her mother-in-law's complaint by Lauren. But as the physical distance couldn't be shortened, I also thought about how to support my daughter mentally. And I also gradually began to feel uncomfortable with her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law hated it extremely when Lauren came home to our place. She even called me directly. Lauren is our daughter-in-law. And yet, she told me that she wants to go back to your place for a while for Thanksgiving. Please be sure to warn her too. Would you? What? But Lauren is also our daughter. So, can't we allow meeting her a few times a year? Lauren is doing well here, you know. Do you really need to meet her so often? Even if I tried, the answer from her mother-in-law was always one-sided. I thought it wouldn't be good to argue too much, considering Lauren's position, so I ended up going along with her mother-in-law's opinion. However, Lauren's husband convinced his mother. Even if you say she's doing well over here, it's obvious that they want to meet her every once in a while. Didn't you always tell me that you were lonely and wanted us to come back here to live with you? Remember? We somehow managed to get permission for a few visits home per year. Whoa, she even called you? I'm sorry, Mom. I really want to build a good relationship with her, but the day after her mother-in-law's contact, Lauren contacted me with a voice full of apologies. No, don't be sorry, honey. I couldn't do anything for you either. I had such frustrating conversations with my daughter many times. Then one day, Lauren contacted me saying that her mother-in-law was angry because I didn't send her a return gift for a present. Huh? I haven't received anything from your husband's family, even once. And yet she demands such things from me? What is that? I was surprised and raised my voice. Really? I knew something was off. I don't understand anything that my mother-in-law is saying or doing anymore. Lauren's voice over the phone showed signs of exhaustion. Well, I'll try. I will hurry and send something. But you should definitely discuss it properly with your husband. I told Lauren that and hung up. About 2 years had passed since Lauren started living with her in-laws when she contacted me again. The relationship with her just can't seem to improve. I think it's better for me not to be around her. Keith feels the same way too. So, we decided to live separately from my in-laws. Apparently, Lauren's husband also judged that he couldn't handle his mother and decided to move out. Well, even if we say we're living separately, it's still within walking distance. I felt relieved when I heard Lauren's laughing voice over the phone. Then, about a year after Lauren and her family left their in-laws' home, I received the news that she was pregnant with her first child. I was happy to hear the news, but secretly thought that the stress of living with her in-laws may have been a factor in Lauren not getting pregnant until now. Lauren gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Alex. However, her mental state began to deteriorate rapidly due to her mother-in-law's overbearing nature. At the suggestion of her husband, when Alex was 2 years old, they came to live with us for several years. Lauren was so mentally exhausted that she had become quite thin. I deeply regretted that I had not been able to do anything for her until then. After a while, Alex, who had started to speak a little, began to say strange things.
Granny, the man with the injured eye is not here today.
What, Alex?
That man with the line in his eye.
Alex pointed to his own right eye and asked me about it. The truth is, my father, who passed away, lost his vision in his right eye and had a scar from an accident at work when he was young. My father passed away when I was young, and the pictures were kept at my parents' house. So even Lauren didn't know about the scar. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but his bizarre stories continued many times.
The man with the injured eye looks real sad. He's saying his house is about to break down.
I told my mother about this. Later, we received a report that the stone on my father's grave had been broken by someone or something. From then on, I felt that maybe Alex had a sixth sense. Lauren seemed to have the same perspective, but she didn't pay much attention to it. I wonder who Alex inherited it from. 2 years passed, and Lauren's mental and physical condition began to recover. So they returned to her in-laws' house. However, she still received a bunch of sarcasm from her mother-in-law. What a terrible woman you are! Taking away my grandson who is the heir. From now on, I will raise Alex in our house. Thankfully, Lauren's husband and father-in-law, her mother-in-law was restricted in contact with them. So she seemed to be able to spend a more comfortable life than before. However, tragedy struck suddenly. One day, out of nowhere, Lauren's husband contacted me and told me that Lauren had fallen down the stairs and died. This news was hardly believable. However, when I rushed to the hospital, she had already become cold, and I had to accept the reality. Soon after, the funeral was held. And of course, Lauren's husband, Alex, and her mother-in-law attended. I managed to maintain my composure and exchanged a greeting with her mother-in-law. But falling down the stairs? Was she not paying attention? With her words, I couldn't even think of her as a human being. And I didn't have the energy to argue back. Mom, how can you say that even at a time like this? Lauren's husband also heard his mother's words and accused her furiously, but she seemed completely indifferent. Then she said to him, who was holding Alex, "Why don't you watch him carefully instead? Don't let him say anything creepy like he always does." Mom, cut it out. Lauren's husband was clearly upset with his mother. "Excuse me, I'm going to step out for a bit. Can you take care of Alex for a while?" Lauren's husband entrusted me with Alex and forcibly took his mother outside the venue. Alex seemed unable to comprehend that his mother had passed away, and I was doing my best to hold back tears.
Granny, why do you look so sad? Mommy's worried about you.
Alex looked at my face with a worried expression. I felt tears that I had been holding back quietly overflow. "Alex, sweetheart, is Mommy here?"
Yeah, she was behind you until a little while ago. She's with Grandma now, over there with Daddy.
Saying that, Alex pointed to where Lauren's husband and mother-in-law.
Mommy said Grandma pushed her on the stairs.
Huh? As soon as I heard Alex's words, all the attendees turned their attention to us. Alex, don't say things like that. Lauren's mother-in-law looked pale at his words, and I could see she was flustered. Alex, can you tell me the story about Mommy later? I spoke to Alex to calm the situation down. After the funeral was over, I returned to Lauren's home with Alex and talked to him slowly. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law was taken to the in-laws' house. Well, Alex, can you tell me the story now?
Mommy's story? Sure, let's go to my room. Mommy's saying something good is in my room.
Alex led me to his room, holding my hand with a cheerful expression.
That thing over there. Can you take it for me?
And looking around the room, Alex pointed the box. Upon checking the contents, there were a small camera and recorder inside. According to Lauren's husband, Alex seemed to be talking to someone even though he was alone, and he would stare intently at nothing. Lauren found it interesting and installed a sound-detecting camera and recorder. Alex, do you know what this is for?
No, but Daddy knows, right?
With Lauren's husband, we nervously confirmed the contents. On the camera, we saw Lauren's mother-in-law breaking into Alex's room, disregarding Lauren's protest. The two women were clearly arguing, and although the stairs were out of sight, the recorder captured her voices and a loud thud. The content was so shocking that I fainted on the spot. I woke up in the hospital, and Lauren's husband explained what happened afterward. Right after I fainted, he immediately contacted the police and submitted the audio and video recordings. The police had been investigating Lauren's accident, and along with the recordings from Alex's room, Lauren's mother-in-law was investigated and arrested a few days later. I took care of Alex for a while, and he seemed to be having a great time at our place. Lauren's husband later told me that his mother had suffered a mental breakdown and was currently in a state of confusion. If only that child hadn't said anything. And that bitch, she should go to hell. She eventually became unresponsive during police questioning. When she found out that Lauren was alone that day, she stormed into her house and got into a fight. They struggled, and she ended up pushing Lauren down the stairs. Lauren was still alive when her mother-in-law left the house. However, Lauren couldn't get up on her own and passed away shortly after. I'm sorry for being so useless. That day, I went out with Alex to give Lauren a break, but I never expected my mother to show up. I can't. I'm sorry. Lauren's husband apologized to me while crying, and I could only listen in shock without being able to sort out my own feelings. Then Alex, who was watching me closely, came over and petted my head.
Granny, Mommy told me to do this. She said she can't touch you, but I can.
He looked at me with a smile. I hugged Alex and cried for a long time before finally gathering my thoughts. Lauren's mother-in-law was taken to the police station, and her hallucinations seemed to have subsided. So there were no legal issues related to her mental state. She was found guilty and became a resident on the other side of the wall. Lauren's husband had to explain the situation to his company, and as a result, he was able to transfer to a neighboring state where I live. While he worked, I took care of Alex. I know you don't want to see me, but for Alex's sake, would you allow me to live nearby? He said this and I agreed. Keith, when you find someone new, I'll take care of Alex for you, so don't worry, okay? Thank you, but Lauren is my only wife. I will work my hardest for her sake and raise Alex into a fine human being. As for me, I had enough savings from my late husband's inheritance to live comfortably. I spent my days enjoying time with my grandson. As for Alex, he no longer said strange things like he did before. Whenever I ask him about it, he just says,
I don't know.
That's all he says. Alex seemed to be enjoying himself with his new friends every day. I still think about my daughter Lauren and cry until my tears run out when I'm alone at night. But for Alex's future, I want to love him as much as I would have loved Lauren.
My husband tried to wish me a happy birthday with a cake his lover baked. When it was revealed, my mill took a charge of punishing him.
It's not fair! Who do you think you are? My husband baked a birthday cake for me. My mother-in-law screamed at the sight of it, then started licking all over the cake. How vulgar. No, Mom! Stop it! I froze, and my husband desperately tried to stop her. It was too late. After eating half of the whole cake, albeit a small one, she breathed heavily and glared at me. I can't believe my precious son would bake a cake for you. You're less than a servant. Her birthday isn't worth celebrating. Anyway, he's my son. He is mine. Marriage doesn't change anything. Remember that. She threw her fork on the floor and puffed out her chest triumphantly. I turned to my husband. Oh, shoot! He was carrying with his head in his hands. What's going on? When he was about to say something, my mother-in-law's eye rolled back and she collapsed to the floor. The story goes back some time ago. Marcus and I fell in love at work. He had joined this company the same year as me, and we hit it off right away. We were both big fans of baseball games, and often went out to the stadium on our days off. It didn't take long for us to become romantically involved. We got married when I was 26. Marcus took the opportunity of our marriage to change jobs. We felt a little awkward working in the same office and the same department. He wanted to take on a new challenge in a different industry that he had always been interested in. Although everyone at the office was disappointed to hear the news, Marcus was determined to pursue his new path. Our colleagues gave us their heartfelt blessing on our marriage and sent Marcus off with their best wishes. It wasn't just them. Friends and family were also exhilarate about our marriage. Well, except for one person. Hey, Ivy, the mirror in the bathroom is dirty again. It's a place for grooming, but you're not very conscious about it. Okay. What's with your attitude? Come on, hurry up and clean it. I wonder why Marcus changed his job for a useless person like you. In her mind, it was my fault that he had to change his career. I knew it was pointless to explain, so I headed for the bathroom in silence. The mirror had some water stains, and that was it. If I had told her it was nothing, I knew she would have been furious with me, so I wiped it clean. The main problem after marriage was my mother-in-law Betsy. She divorced her ex-husband when Marcus was still young and raised him by herself. Perhaps that was why she was more overprotective of him than usual. She even insisted we live only 2 subway stops away from where she lived. She visited us every weekend and criticized me. Eventually, she started coming over even when Marcus was out. He picked up on some hobbies and often went out with new friends on his days off. Even though I told her he wasn't at home, she kept showing up, and I had no choice but to entertain her. When the mirror was wiped clean, I heard her calling me for some other task. With a grunt, I headed for the living room to see what was next. "I'm home!" By the time I heard Marcus' carefree voice, it was already evening. The house was spotless from top to bottom, thanks to all the things Betsy had me do. "Oh, you're back!" She rushed to the door. She took off his jacket and walked into the living room with him. "Hi, honey."
"Hey, I brought you some sweets."
"Oh, you are so thoughtful."
These are for Ivy and..."
Before he could finish, Betsy took out patisseries from a paper bag and began munching them. As we watched her without saying a word, she noticed us and made a sulky face. "Let me be. It's only fair that I get treated the same way as Ivy." She acted like a child, but I was in no mood to argue with her. I signaled Marcus with my eyes, and we let her do whatever she wanted to do. When I went to the kitchen to prepare dinner, he followed me for some reason. I needed him to keep an eye on Betsy. "What's up?"
"Sorry, I was told to attend a meeting with a client on Monday."
"Really?"
"Yeah, I got a call from my boss earlier."
He sounded apologetic because it was my birthday on Monday, and we were supposed to go out for a nice dinner. We had decided a long time ago that we would take a day off and spend it together. Well, if he was told to work then, that was that.
"I'm really sorry. I will make it up to you later, I promise."
"Don't worry.
I will cook you something special."
Then, Betsy popped up in the kitchen. Before she could ask us what was going on, Marcus took her back to the living room. I was disappointed, but told myself to let go and started cooking dinner. It was the following night when the harsh reality hit me. Marcus had to prepare for the meeting and was coming home late. As I was getting ready for bed, I received a message and pictures from a colleague who was on maternity leave. I opened the app without thinking much and was met with an eye-opening text and a few images. "Sorry it's so late. This is Marcus, right? I saw him while I was shopping." There were pictures of him and an unknown woman sitting next to each other at a cafe. Images were of them happily feeding a cake to each other on a terrace and snuggling up. All of them were inexcusable evidence. Seeing him in a suit, they must have met during a break from work. I couldn't sleep that night. I thought about ignoring him, but if he sensed something was up, it might have hindered me from getting more proof. I had to find out more about the woman, no matter what it took. I decided to act as normal as possible and tried not to show my anxiety on my face. Then, the day before my birthday, he said he was going to meet a friend and left the house as usual. 5 minutes after I saw him off, I went out as well. I walked quickly toward the station. I had a hunch that he would take the subway. It was a 10 minutes walk from my house to the station, so if I hurried, I would be able to catch up with him. As I was walking, unpleasant thoughts kept swirling around in my head. I was sure that all his previous outings had been to meet the woman. If so, the affair had started 6 months ago. Why? Was he unhappy in his marriage? I was the only one who thought we were doing well. As I was walking and wiping away my tears, I spotted him. He got on the subway and got off after 3 stops, and I followed him. After working for a while, he went into a small pastry shop. I wondered what in the world he was doing there. Then I saw a woman in an apron come out of the kitchen. It was her in the pictures. I hurried to photograph of the exterior of the shop and of them making out. Then I left as fast as possible. After I returned home, I did some housework to distract myself. I took pictures, but didn't know what to do with them. Eventually, the sun went down, and I had dinner with Marcus as usual when he returned. The day was over in a flash. That night, I noticed that Marcus, who was sleeping next to me, had left the bed. The phone on his bedside table was also gone. I wondered if he was going to call his lover. I got out of bed too. He was doing something in the dark kitchen, relying only on the light from the refrigerator. The suspicious movements scared me, so I turned on the light and called out to him. Then a paper bag fell from his hand. The name of that pastry shop was printed on the bag. I felt my blood run cold.
Oh shoot, you caught me. I wanted to make it a surprise for you by looking in a fridge tomorrow.
He was holding a small-sized whole cake. The chocolate plate on top of it had a writing, "Happy birthday, my love." The poor handwriting must have been his. He had taken the trouble to write it by himself when he should have left it to the chef. I was sure he didn't want his lover to know about my existence. Moreover, he wanted me to eat the cake that she baked.
Happy birthday, honey. Since you are here, do you want some?
Thanks, but not now. I will save the fun for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's late for a cake.
I didn't want to eat it at all, though I couldn't tell him that. I was too lazy to withdraw my request for a day off, so I stayed home alone on my birthday. After seeing Max off, I sank into the sofa. I pondered what I was going to do. I had to think, but my brain was foggy, and I couldn't think straight. Then suddenly, the doorbell rang. I looked to see who it was, and saw Betsy standing there looking grumpy. She was the last person I wanted to see right then, but I couldn't just ignore her. I opened the door with a heavy heart. As soon as she saw me, she told me to clean the front porch because it was messy. I told her to let me get her a drink first, but she brushed me off. She didn't want it and just wanted me to get to cleaning right away. I returned inside the house after about half an hour and didn't find her in the living room. There was a noise coming from the kitchen. I went to check and found her in front of the fridge. Betsy? Startled by my voice, something fell to the floor. It was my birthday cake that was more than half gone. She apparently found it and ate it without asking me. She had snatched sweets that Marcus had bought for me before, but it was shocking to see her eating my birthday cake. When I was totally stunned, her face turned red. "What are you staring at? It means nothing to me that you're married to Marcus. He's my only son, and he's always mine." She screamed at me with whipped cream around her mouth. What lay crumbled on the floor was what used to be my birthday cake. The writing on the sheet of chocolate was almost illegible. It was a whole cake, albeit a small one. She ate more than half of it by herself. It wasn't that she loved the cake so much, but more like she couldn't stand my existence. When I remained silent, she threw her fork down on the floor. I raised him all by myself. I can't allow you to take him away from me. I know him better than you do. She fell to her knees, covering her face, and began to cry hysterically. Calm down, Betsy. Don't touch me. I don't need your sympathy. She shook my hand off, and I fell on my bottom from the push. I couldn't stay silent any longer, and I clenched my fist. His lover made that cake. What? That's why I couldn't eat it. Here is the proof. The moment I showed her the pictures, she mumbled, "Oh, dear God," and collapsed. I rushed to pick her up, but she seemed to have passed out. Her body was limp. I managed to carry her to the sofa and clean up the remnants of the cake. I didn't know what to do, but Marcus wasn't answering his phone. I called his office and was told a shocking truth.
Marcus? He's not in today.
I thought he had a meeting with a client.
No, he requested a day off. Oh, but you didn't know.
He was about to say something, but I hung up the phone. In the meantime, Betsy opened her eyes. When I handed her a glass of water, she covered my hand that was holding the glass with both of her hands. I had never gotten such a gesture from her before. Is it true what you said? Yes, I have other evidence. When I showed her the pictures of my colleague had sent me, she let out a deep sigh. That night, as soon as Marcus opened the front door, she stood up to face him. I followed her and saw her standing firmly in front of him. You have something to say, don't you?
What happened? Why are you mad at me?
Ivy, the pictures. I hurriedly showed my phone screen to him. He agitated for a moment, but then put a fake smile on his face.
Oh, she's one of my clients who's friendly with me. It's kind of a sales technique.
Marcus, be honest.
I'm sorry.
He knelt on the spot and began to confess. I was right about them meeting on the weekends for the last 6 months. He asked her to bake her cake, lying that he would eat it himself. The writing was done by him as I guessed. While listening to him talking, tears were streaming down Betsy's face.
I just wanted to have some fun. Honey, you will forgive me this much, right?
You know that your dad and I divorced because of his infidelity, right?
Yes.
And yet, you're pathetic for hurting Ivy this way. I gently rubbed her trembling back. He just kept apologizing. A month later, I'm in my spacious house talking with Betsy. I'm so sorry. I apologize for Marcus' infidelity and for the way I have been treating you. It's okay now. His affair is his own problem. No, I was too attached to him. I thought you were taking my only son away from me, and that made me feel lonely. My attitude got to his head and made him act like a fool. After that incident, I filed for divorce. He tried to continue the relationship with the lover, but I sent her a note with a copy of my marriage certificate, which ended their relationship. She wasn't aware that he was married and immediately dumped him. Because of the call I made to his office, the rumor of his infidelity and divorce spread at his work. He is still working there, being shamed by his coworkers. What are you going to do now? I'm selling this house and getting a new place. I want to start over from scratch. I hear you. Please come visit my new house if you like. I will let you know when I settle in. Thank you, my dear. I'm still hurt, but I'm sure that this event has some meaning. I will try my best little by little to make it a funny story someday. The gentle light of the sun through the windows shines on us.
After my dad passed away, my stepmother kicked me out and tried to claim his estate. A few days later, she ended up begging me in tears.
You get out of here. You are a stranger now. After my beloved father's funeral, my stepmother stood in front of me and ordered, "A stranger? We've been strangers from the beginning, haven't we? Since he's gone, this house and all the inheritance belong to me, his widow. You get the heck out of here now." Don't you have any remorse for the terrible things you have done to me and for ignoring my father when he needed you? I squeezed out my voice to ask her, and she burst into laughter. Are you kidding me? I'm glad I don't have to see you guys anymore. If anything, I should be thankful that I didn't ask for a divorce a long time ago. I warned her, who was smirking at me in a low voice. You will regret it. You are an idiot. You are just mad that I took your inheritance and your house. You are a sore loser, aren't you? You are indeed the daughter of that moron. By the way, please take his ashes with you. I don't want them. I was silently raging at that point. I would never forgive her for treating me like a piece of garbage all those years and insulting my late father. I tried to remain calm. I understood. I will leave for now, but I guess I will see you soon. Yeah, right. I will never want to see you again. She yelled at my back as I walked away. A few days later, she would be banging on my door in a panic. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 25 years old. I'm a single career woman, making my life alone after leaving my dad's house. To tell you the truth, I've had a difficult past. When I had just started middle school, my mother died of illness. She was only 34 years old. She was sweet and showered me with love as much as she could. When I think back on her, I still get watery eyes with nostalgia and sadness. She was my one and only precious mother. I still remember how depressed my father was when she passed away. My parents, I remember, were very affectionate to each other. After her death, he lost control of himself and couldn't even hold his job. During that time, I was left with my maternal grandmother and stayed with her until the 3rd grade. He finally came to pick me up when I started my 4th grade. He had been hired by a well-known company and had cleaned himself up. He apologized and asked me to go home with him and live together from then on. I loved my grandmother, who was always kind to me, but I was more than happy to go back to my father after feeling abandoned for so long. For the next 6 years, I lived alone with him. He did his best to raise me while working. I helped him with the housework as much as I could, and we lived an ordinary but happy life. It was around the time I was in my sophomore year that my life changed drastically. One day, my father brought a woman to the house.
Charlotte, this is Nicole. We are planning to get married.
Nice to finally meet you, Charlotte. I was shocked, to say the least. My father, who was supposed to love my mother, was remarrying a woman more than 10 years younger than him. I couldn't say anything that day and locked myself in my room. As I deliberated over it alone, I realized something. Since he lost my mother, all he had done was raise me. He must have felt lonely for a long time. If he had found someone who loved him and cared about him, I should have supported his decision. I went out of my room to tell him that, Dad, I give my blessing to your marriage. I hope you will be happy.
Really? Thank you, Charlotte. But the most important thing for me is you. Don't ever forget that.
Yes, Dad. I love you.
Love you too. Nicole will move in with us soon. Let's build a happy family together.
Sure. Less than a month later, Nicole started living with us. Dear, I'm your new mom. She cheerfully announced it to me on the first day she moved in. I awkwardly welcomed her with a hug. At the time, my father was 45 and she was 33. I was hesitant to call her mom because she was a stranger to me. In the end, I settled on calling her by name. She quit her job upon her marriage and became a housewife, so she was home all day. At first, we were very cautious of each other. The incident occurred when we had been living together for about a month. One day, when I came home from school and walked into my room, I couldn't believe my eyes. All the pictures of my late mother that had been on my desk and bookshelves were gone. I rushed to the kitchen and asked Nicole, who was cooking, "Did you go into my room?" "Yes, I went in to clean. My mom's pictures are missing. Do you know anything about it?" "Oh yeah, I threw them away." She stopped cooking, looked at me, and smiled as if it was normal. I quickly confronted her. "Why? You did an awful thing. It's so depressing to keep displaying pictures of the dead." I felt dizzy seeing her giggle at her own statement. I had a bad feeling, and as I moved to the living room, my eyes caught sight of what used to be my mother's altar all cleaned up, and her pictures and mementos stuffed in a garbage bag. "What have you done?" I protested with tears, and she told me with a straight face, "I'm here now, and all this is just a nuisance." "How dare you? I don't want to look at the altar. If you don't want it thrown away, why don't you take it into your room?" While I stood there stunned, she went back to cooking, humming a tune. That night, I complained to my father. "Dad, she went into my room and threw away my mom's picture. She even cleaned up the altar."
Oh, really?
"That's it, Dad? Doesn't it make you upset?"
She's my second wife, so she has a lot of complicated feelings. Please understand.
"I can't believe you're taking her side."
Let's just move the altar to your room. That way, it won't be a problem, right?
"Okay, then put a lock on my door so she can't come into my room anymore." I shouted in anger at my father's lukewarm attitude. After that, I set up my mother's altar in my room and had to spend my time always on the lookout for Nicole. A year after the three of us started living together, my father was assigned to work in another state. I didn't want to transfer to another school, so Nicole and I were left to live together. After my father left, her true colors suddenly showed up. In front of him, she pretended to be a good wife and wise mother. Once she was alone with me, there was no need for her to do so. Her attitude toward me became worse and worse by the day. When I came home from school, there was no dinner prepared. She left out my laundry and no longer cleaned the house. "Here, this is your allowance. You have to make do with this for a month." She gave me $100 bill. "You want me to eat with this? It's not enough." "Don't be extravagant. And stop talking to me for nothing. I don't even want to see your face," she said coldly, put on her makeup, and went out. For the next 2 years, until I graduated from high school, I had $100 a month for 3 meals. Whenever I didn't have enough, I took the money from the savings I had from my past allowance. As a high school student with no financial resources, all I could do was endure. It was a hard and miserable time, but I didn't want to worry my father and never complained to him. That was not all. After he moved out, Nicole started going out often at night. I spent my days eating discounted TV dinners alone at home. Even so, I felt better than being with her. She became more and more hostile toward me as time passed. What's that arrogant look on your face? I wonder if you got those defiant eyes from your mother. I don't like you. Can't you get out of this house ASAP? You're annoying. Don't you get it? I had to listen to such spiteful comments every day that I started to lose weight from the stress. I didn't know how much longer I could have lived like that. All I wanted was to get out of the house. I spent most of my time locked inside my room and studied hard. When I was accepted to the university of my choice, I left home without waiting for my father's return. After that, I hardly visited my father. He missed me and asked me to come home, but I really didn't want anything to do with Nicole. My university was far away, but I found a job in my hometown and lived in an apartment not far from him. One day, I got a text from my father during my lunch break.
Why don't you come home on your next day off? I have something important to tell you. I will be waiting.
I thought about it for a moment and replied, Okay, I will be there this weekend. Normally, I would have stayed away from that house, but I felt like I had to go. I reluctantly rang the doorbell at his house.
Charlotte, my dear, it's been a long time.
Surprisingly, it was only he who answered the door. He looked a lot thinner than when I had seen him before. Is Nicole not here today?
No, she went out with her friends. Sit down.
While I was relieved that I didn't have to see her, he brought out a drink for me. After a brief catch-up, he suddenly said,
Listen, Charlotte, I have cancer.
What?
By the time I found out, it had already spread, and there was nothing doctors could do. I don't think I have more than 3 months to live.
I was shedding tears as he spoke matter-of-factly. After my mother, I was going to lose my father too. It was painful to think so. He put his hands on my shoulder and told me something. I was astonished at what he revealed and listened intently. As soon as he finished, I opened my mouth. I understand everything. For now, please just think about yourself and I will be on your side. He nodded and weakly smiled at me. He was admitted to the hospital soon after that. It was not for treatment, but mainly for palliative care to relieve his pain. I visited him every day, but I never saw Nicole. It wasn't that our visiting times were different. She was his wife, yet she never took care of him, let alone came to visit him. 2 months after my father was hospitalized, the day finally arrived. He had gone to heaven. I saw him take the last breath and broke down in tears in his hospital room. Dad, don't leave me yet. I wailed, remembering the happy days of our life. Oh, he's finally gone to the other side. I turned around in the direction of the voice and saw Nicole, whom I had not seen for years. She had become much more flamboyant than I remembered. Her face also looked harsher. Where have you been all this time? She snickered at me and said, I had no choice but to come and confirm the death of my husband. I will be the chief mourner, so you will have to make the arrangements. She left with that. I held my father's cold hand once more. The funeral was held at home, per his wishes before his death. Nicole was the chief mourner, but I did most of the arrangements and payments. She cried deliberately in front of the mourners and acted the part of a devastated widow. With her in the background, I did what I had to do with a stoic look on my face. After the funeral was over and the mourners had left, we were alone. I'm exhausted. Funerals are such a pain in the butt. I ignored her and kept cleaning up. Then she suddenly stood in front of me. Get out of here. You are a stranger now. She was grinning. A stranger? We have been strangers from the beginning, haven't we? Since he is gone, this house and all the inheritance belong to me, his widow. You get the heck out of here. Don't you have any remorse for the terrible things you have done to me, and for ignoring my father when he needed you? I squeezed out my voice to ask her, and she burst into laughter. Are you kidding me? How could I feel any remorse? I'm glad I didn't have to see you guys anymore. If anything, I should be thanked that I didn't ask for a divorce a long time ago. I warned her, who was smirking at me in a low voice. You will regret it. You're an idiot. You're just mad that I took your inheritance and your house. You're a sore loser, aren't you? You are indeed a daughter of that moron. I see. By the way, please take his ashes with you. I only want his money. I was silently raging at that point. On top of treating me terribly all those years, she insulted my late father. I would never forgive her. I tried to remain calm. I understood. I will leave for now. Well, I guess I will see you soon though. Yeah, right. I will never want to see you again. She yelled at my back as I walked away. I left with my father's ashes. A few days later, when I was home alone, someone banged on my door. Who is it? I opened the door to find Nicole standing there in a panic. I need to talk to you. Let me in. She barged into my apartment and shouted at me with a grimace. How come you alone will inherit everything? Oh, you heard from the lawyer? I acted nonchalant, sitting down comfortably on the sofa and gazing at exasperated Nicole. Your lawyer suddenly showed up at my house. He told me to leave. I don't have any inheritance, and you will inherit it. I don't understand. I'm his widow. I'm supposed to get everything. Didn't you ask him why? He said something about this inheritance, but I didn't get it. I don't understand what's going on at all. I sighed at her outburst. Didn't you know about this inheritance? My father decided that you would not inherit anything. He had gone through the due process. If you are disinherited, you don't even get a forced portion. What? That can't be legal. It is a legitimate system. Besides, there must be a good reason to be disinherited. Reason? Yes. You have been unfaithful to my father ever since he moved away for his job, haven't you? She was fuming with a bright red face, but then she looked stunned for a moment and started ranting again. What are you talking about? That's a false accusation. I have proof. The evidence my father had collected. I spread out the photographs of evidence that had been collected by a private investigator. She froze in front of the unimpeachable evidence. That day, when I was summoned by my father, he explained everything to me. You mean he knew everything? Yes, he did. He wrote everything about your verbal abuses and about you stealing money in his diary. That's why the court granted the disinheritance. No way! This can't be! I stared at her with a straight face as the blood drained out of her face. Suddenly, she started pleading with me. Charlotte, it can't be true! If I'm kicked out of the house and don't get my inheritance, I will be on the street. I looked down at her, who was holding my arms, and told her matter-of-factly. My father had actually told me something. If you showed the slightest remorse for what you have done, I should give you at least your immediate living expenses. But on the day of the funeral, you insulted him and me. That was just a figure of speech. We are family, right? Help me! I will never help you. You are a stranger. I don't care what happens to you. Oh, please! I shook pale-faced Nicole off of my arms and threw her out of my place. After that, She continued to stay at my father's house until I issued an eviction order through my lawyer. She ran away with the tail between her legs. I heard from my relatives that she was dumped by her lover, who was after her money. She is now living in a shabby studio apartment and working as a cleaner, as well as a part-timer at a factory. She is apparently having a hard life, but I don't feel sorry for her at all. I guess it's pointless to hope that she will reflect a little on her own conduct. I, on the other hand, have successfully received the rights to my father's house and inheritance. He left me enough money so that I will be able to live without any problems in the future. I am truly grateful to him. I smile at the pictures of my parents on the wall and promise myself to cherish the life they have given me.
You probably can't get pregnant because you're getting old. Isn't it over for you? My 18-year-old little sister Melissa began to brag about her own pregnancy. Ever since she was young, Melissa would always steal everything I considered precious. But to think she'd steal my husband and get pregnant. She really took everything from me. I was left all alone. At that moment, a reality I would have never imagined was suddenly revealed to me. My name is Noelle. I'm 26 years old. My husband Thomas is 36 years old, 10 years older than me. He's a high school teacher. We ride the same train to commute, so we got to know each other when he spoke to me one morning. At first, I didn't like that I was getting hit on, and I didn't think much of him. But then he protected me from a pervert on the train, and I felt how down-to-earth he was as an older man, so I was gradually charmed by him. After chasing after me for a while, I finally folded, and we began dating. Very straightforward with how he feels, he was reliable and overflowing with confidence, and that often made my heart skip a beat. He proposed to me at a restaurant with a scenic view of the city at night, and along with the engagement ring, gave me a bouquet of 100 roses. Though I laughed at him and called him cheesy, I was so happy that tears flowed from my eyes. He hugged me and said,
"There's no need for words. Just let me take care of you."
He was always dazzling. I had no doubt that I would be spending the rest of my life with Thomas. Around 1 year passed after getting married. I was hoping to have children soon, but I wasn't feeling down because I just couldn't get pregnant. While working as usual, I began going to fertility treatments, which took its toll on me. As soon as my period would end each month, I would go to the clinic, take the medication they gave me, and suffer from side effects of the treatments. The days I went to the clinic, I would have to take off work. I couldn't just announce to everyone that I was undergoing fertility treatments, but people began complaining about all the days I was taking off. Not feeling like I was getting any closer to achieving my goal, I was incredibly concerned. I wanted to try IVF, but Thomas was old-fashioned and said he didn't want to rely on unnatural ways to have a baby, so we could do nothing but hope that good timing would get me pregnant. Tied to the issue of timing, Thomas began feeling responsibility and stress, which caused things to grow a bit awkward between us. One weekend, Thomas was away on a work trip, and I visited my mom for the first time in a while. As usual, we spoke about the fertility treatments. My mom became pregnant with my sister Melissa and I as soon as she wanted, so the fact I couldn't get pregnant made her glum. In the middle of our conversation, Melissa, who had been out with her friends, returned home.
"I'm home. Sis, you still can't get pregnant? You're basically 30 now. You've become middle-aged. Why don't you just give up?"
So rude. Saying 26 is basically 30. We've never gotten along. 8 years younger than me, our parents always babied her, and that made her very sassy. No, I should say way too sassy. She always looked down on me, and basically considered me to be her servant. Ever since we were young, if she liked any dolls or stuffed animals of mine, she would immediately take them. Well, our parents would make me give them to her. I was the older one, so I dealt with. But Instead of being grateful to me, she just considered herself to be better than me. Though she's 18 years old, she doesn't help out around the house at all, nor does she have a job. She just uses our parents' money to play around with her friends as much as she wants. It's partly our parents' fault since they always just let things slide. I was originally thinking of spending the night with my family, but I decided that being around Melissa would just cause me more mental stress, so I went home instead. From that time on, Thomas began returning home from work late every night. He would come up with excuses like that he had to finish tasks related to the hobby club he was in, or that suddenly 2 teachers quit so his workload increased. We continued trying to get pregnant late at night, but it wouldn't work. Then, one Saturday morning, our doorbell rang. Oh, who is it this early? Thomas stared at his phone in silence. When I opened the door, I saw it was Melissa. Huh? Why are you here?
I have a surprise for you.
She spoke with a wide grin, unable to hide her excitement. I have a bad feeling about this. Before I could say another word, she stepped into our home as if it was hers and slipped off her jacket.
Ah, Tommy, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. You look handsome as always today.
Melissa spoke with a cutesy voice and sat next to Thomas at the dining table. Sorry to keep him waiting. Did Thomas know she was coming over? I'm feeling uneasy about this. What are you here for? I sat down at the table across from them, but no matter how I thought about it, this was strange.
I'm your guest, aren't I? Aren't you going to offer me something to drink? She really is a useless wife, isn't she, Tommy?
She stuck her bottom lip out and made a cute face at Thomas, who just mumbled back.
I have something I want to show you.
As she said that, she took out a photo. It was an ultrasound photo of a baby, the thing I wanted the most. Why does my sister... Unable to speak for my own confusion, my sister continued.
This is my baby. Or I should say, mine and Thomas's baby.
Huh? Everything went blank. I could hear my heartbeat getting faster and louder. It became so loud that I couldn't hear what my sister was saying anymore. My sister and husband was having an affair. Maybe they were going to apologize? Thinking that, I looked over at Thomas. He opened his mouth to speak.
I have no use for a woman in her 30s like you. Recently, all you've been talking about is getting pregnant, and it's been getting on my nerves. I want a young wife, so why don't we break up?
What? Hearing something I never imagined, all I could do was gape in shock. From the corner of my eye, I saw my sister smile comfortably. Before I realized, I was running out of the house sobbing. Thomas didn't run after me. All my hopes were dashed, and I could feel how deeply my heart was hurt. I went directly to my parents' home to talk to our mom, but all she said was,
There's really nothing you can do about Melissa.
No matter what I said, she wouldn't see things from my view. There's no way. That attitude is what made Melissa like this. Dad spoiled Melissa even more than Mom did, so I knew that talking with him was pointless. I couldn't rely on our parents. With nowhere to go, I went over to my cousin's house, who lived on her own nearby. She listened to my story and got angry as if everything had happened to her. That in itself was a huge source of support for my broken heart. I divorced my husband shortly after. My feelings for my husband had completely disappeared. I didn't feel like even talking to him, so the signing of that one paper brought our relationship to its end. But my anger towards my sister and ex-husband wouldn't calm, and I felt my heart bubbling every day. I felt like my life would end like this, with me being stepped on and used until the very end. One day, as I was strolling outside wondering what I should do, my phone suddenly rang. Hello? Yes. Yes. I had forgotten about that. Huh? Oh, really? After that phone call, I knew I could get back at them. It's okay. It'll be okay. Half a year passed, and I heard from Mom that Melissa had given birth. Though I was completely over my ex-husband, my heart still hurt slightly. Now then, time to move. I headed towards the apartment I used to live with Thomas in. Now he lived there together with Melissa. Ding dong.
Oh, sis? It's been a while. I thought I wouldn't meet you here ever again. Why are you here?
Melissa looked surprised I was here. Her newborn baby girl was cradled in her arms.
Could it be that you still haven't forgotten Tommy, so you're here to meet him? I won't give him back to you.
I don't need you to, I yelled back inside my heart. But I keep that inside and remained calm. I have something important to talk to you about. I walked into the house. Our simple interior design from before had changed a lot. My sister was still young, so posters and figurines from the shows she liked were all over. There was no way anyone can relax here. Thomas was sitting in the living room. He wouldn't make eye contact with me.
I'm going to make everyone a cup of coffee because I'm a good wife.
Before Melissa headed to the kitchen, she handed her baby to Thomas, whose face immediately changed. He grinned, and you could see how his heart was melting. Well, the baby was cute. What could you do? Well then, let's start. I don't need coffee. And that baby isn't yours. As I said that to Thomas, Melissa froze.
Huh? What? What are you saying?
Thomas finally looked up at me.
What are you saying, Noelle? This is obviously Tommy and I's baby. What's the meaning of you saying this now?
Melissa screamed, her face bright red. Look at this. I pulled out a sheet of paper. It showed the results of a test proving Thomas was impotent.
What is this?
Thomas and Melissa peered at the paper. When I was getting fertility treatments, I began to wonder whether Thomas might be infertile, so I secretly took a sperm sample of his to get tested. The results came through on the phone the day I was wondering how I could get back at them. My ex-husband couldn't have kids.
So, the reason we couldn't have a baby wasn't you? It was me? Huh? Then this child...
Thomas's arms that were holding the baby trembled.
I'm sorry,
Unable to make excuses, Melissa burst out in tears. She was admitting to it, huh? Seeing Melissa like that, Thomas burst.
Hey, Melissa, who is it? Who is the father?
Melissa just continued to cry and apologize. Scared, the baby also began to cry. It was chaos.
Tell me the truth.
Cornered, Melissa finally told the truth. The father was her boyfriend at the time, who was younger than her. At the time, he was a 17-year-old high school student. Since the two of them couldn't get married and raise the child together, they decided to use an adult they could easily fool. That turned out to be Thomas. Attracted by young girls, Thomas played right into their hands.
But listen, the person I love now is you.
Melissa looked up at Thomas with puppy eyes, which made me laugh. Quit the act. You're still dating that guy. I took out a photo. It showed Melissa's boyfriend hugging her at the hospital after she gave birth. It was from just a few days ago.
Huh?
Thomas and Melissa both went pale. My cousin took that photo. Being related to Melissa, she had gone to the hospital with her parents to visit Melissa and the baby, and they happened upon that scene. Unable to believe the situation, they cornered Melissa's boyfriend as he left the hospital and questioned him. Wanted to make sure Thomas and Melissa get payback for what they did, she shared the photo with me. She really pulled through for me. By the way, I'm pregnant now. Just like my sister did before, I took out an ultrasound photo and put it on the table. After divorcing Thomas and feeling depressed, my colleague Sean supported me a lot. Not much time took for me to be charmed by him. Of course, I thought it was silly of me to jump into a new relationship so shortly after my divorce. I thought he probably just pitied me. But supposedly he had been interested in me since I first joined the company because he thought I was strong and considerate. On our 5th date, he told me he wanted to protect me and said we should get married. At that point, I completely trusted him and had fallen for him. Maybe it's about time for me to consider getting remarried. As I was considering that, we discovered I was pregnant. My fears of being infertile disappeared. That served as further proof that Thomas was impotent. My prideful ex-husband had a pathetic look on his face I had never seen before. My sister, who until now had bullied me for being unable to have kids, couldn't say anything, but she seemed intrigued by something on the ultrasound. She was staring at the name of the clinic printed on the photo.
Huh? IEK Ladies Clinic? Melissa, no way. You're going to give birth there?
That clinic is famous in the area as a super high-class maternity hospital. Rooms that look like they're from an expensive hotel, exquisite meals, spa treatments for new mothers, and so on. It's well known for treating its clients like princesses, and is often used by famous people.
Your little sister begged us to let her have her baby there, even though we don't have that kind of money.
Our mom complained to me once. I didn't think much about it at the time.
How?
My new husband. He's the inheritor of a famous foreign investment enterprise. Saying it like that is a bit embarrassing because it seems like I'm showing off, but it's true. I found out the truth when we were registering our marriage. Though Sean's father was the president of a large company and was a bit old-fashioned, he completely accepted the fact we got pregnant before marriage and that I had been divorced and welcomed me into the family. Sean's mother was just as kind and accepting. Though I felt like I couldn't trust people like before, they were warm enough to melt my frozen heart. My in-laws ensured that I could give birth at that clinic. He's currently my colleague, but he's soon going to take over his father's company. My sister fell into her chair. She couldn't say anything. Where did her combative spirit go? Well, that's that. I don't think we'll be meeting each other again, so I came to say my final goodbyes. Take care. I took my ultrasound photo and left. After I exited the house, I realized, I left behind my ex-husband's fertility test result and the photo of Melissa with her boyfriend. Oh well. All the bitterness that had been weighing me down disappeared. This morning I found out my baby-to-be gender. How should I tell Sean? How will he react? I'm sure he'll be happy regardless if it's a girl or a boy. My head was full of happy thoughts of our future together. In the blink of an eye, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy, and he turned 6 months old. The more he grows, the more his smile becomes like Sean's. It's adorable. Our son can't walk yet. Watching Sean lightly play soccer or catch with our baby in his arms is so lovable. As for my ex-husband and sister, their relationship obviously couldn't continue after that, and they divorced. Having dropped out of high school to give birth, Melissa was now doing nothing but locking herself in her room. The father of her baby had gone on to university where he started dating someone new and completely abandoned Melissa. Supposedly, he cut off his ties with his family as well. Attracted to young girls, as always, Thomas had tried pulling something with some of his students, and I recently saw in the news that he was fired from his job. That's karma. I'm living such a peaceful and happy life. It's as if that tough past was all just a bad dream. I'm almost grateful to Thomas and Melissa for giving me the chance to live the happy life I am now. Sean and I both quit our job at the same time, and he went on to prepare to inherit his father's company. He looks excited for that new challenge. He comes home from work early every night to help bathe, feed, and take care of our baby. He also helps make dinner and clean. He's really a wonderful husband. As I stood on our balcony, gazing at the spring sky and thinking about everything that has happened, Sean called out to me.
If you stay outside for too long, you're going to freeze.
He put a cardigan over my shoulders. Thank you, but today is warm, so it's okay. You're worrying too much. This fall, a new smiling face is going to join our family. My reasons to be happy are only increasing.